there, Lorcana lovers, my name's Lizard, and today I want to talk to you about my new favorite deck. It's a sapphire steel ramp deck that I like to call another cog in a wheel machine. I believe this deck is currently one of the best decks you can play, so let's get into it. Okay, here we go. So here is the cog in a wheel machine. Right off the bat, you'll see this deck is rather expensive to build, sitting at about $343. Now, if you don't already have a lot of these cards from like the first and second set, this deck might be a little bit challenging for you to build a physical version of. However, if you're playing on Pixelborn, of course, it's free, so you can have a lot of fun with it there. And if you do want to build this deck as a physical version for your locals or whatever it is that you're playing, you could potentially cut the beast cards and save yourself a little bit of money. Maybe swap in a couple of Tinkerbell. I think it's a 3-drop card that you can have an easier shift target, or possibly even the 2-drop Cinderella card and make her easier to shift down, and plus that card cycles a card out of your deck, so that would be helpful. If you want to make this deck a little bit more affordable, cutting those 2 beasts is the best way to go about it. So let's get into it here. We have 4 copies of the 1-drop Captain Hook, 4 copies of the Mr. Smee. These 2 cards just go hand in hand, Mr. Smee being the best 2-drop in the game in my opinion. And when he is in play, he, on turn 2, being able to come down with a 3/3 and questing for 2 on your very next turn. Like I said, there's not a lot of other cards that beat this out of its value. And even this ability at the end of your turn, if this character is exerted and you don't have a captain character in play, deal 1 damage to this character, it really doesn't hold it back. Like I said, we're playing it with the Captain Hook, and we also are running Cogsworth in this deck. Where's he at? Right here. So Cogsworth also allows that character to quest without gaining any damage on him because he gives everybody resist +1. So yet again, we have great synergy there. We're running 2 copies of the Mickey Mouse Detective. We're running 2 copies of this Belle. This Belle is another one that is kind of expensive at $20. If you wanted to cut her out, you probably could and find something else to put in there. I really like running this Belle. You don't really ever want her in the beginning of the game, but if you can get her down late game and have this lucky dime in play, you're instantly going to be able to exert this dime and gain the 5 lore from Belle, because by that point in the game, this is a ramp deck. You're most likely going to have the ink that you need. Her being only 4 cost, a lot of times you can get her out and the dime out at the same time, and then still have the 2 ink left over to exert it and just close out games really fast that way. So I do like to include her in the deck. We're running 4 copies of Hiram Flaversham. He is a huge part of the draw engine that you need in this deck. Being that you're dumping a lot of cards into your inkwell quickly, you need ways to draw cards. So Hiram is a must-have in this deck. We're running 4 copies of the Cogsworth, 2 copies of the Beast, 3 copies of Gaston. This is another great card to help with card draw and cycling through your deck. He is uninkable, but that is okay because once again, this is a ramp deck. We're getting a lot of ink in the inkwell, and we also are playing the Fishbone Quill, which allows you to ink a card from your hand. Whether it's uninkable or not, everything's fair game with the Fishbone Quill. So having a lot of uninkables doesn't necessarily hold you back as much as it would in other decks. You see, we are actually running 16 uninkable cards, which really isn't that high of a count. I wouldn't want to run much more than 16, but like I said, with the Fishbone Quill, that allows you to run a higher count of uninkables and not really have to worry about them sitting in your hand for too long. We also are running 4 copies of the Tinkerbell. I don't need to say much about her. This card's always been a powerhouse. Excellent card. Just is continuing to be one of my favorite cards in Lorcana. We're running 3 copies of Cinderella Stout-Hearted. This card is another phenomenal card to pair with the Lucky Dime. She has 3 lore that she can quest for herself, and the Lucky Dime can gain that 3 lore as well. She's got resist +2, and in the mirror matches, this deck's becoming more and more popular. So she's nice to have against those mirror matches because they'll be playing Cogsworth as well, and these Cogsworths are pretty hard to get rid of, especially because if you're piloting the deck correctly, you're trying your best not to have him exerted. You want him to stay in play as long as he possibly can. And Cinderella having her ability, the singing sword, whenever you play a song, this character may challenge ready characters this turn. That allows you to swing into this Cogsworth and deal with him in one shot, because she swings on him for 5, and he's only got 5 willpower. And we are running songs in this deck. We have And Then Along Came Zeus, A Whole New World, and Grab Your Sword. So you do have the opportunity to utilize that ability. We are also running 4 copies of Develop Your Brain. Once again, we just want the draw and cycling through the deck. We're running 2 copies of Rise of the Titans because locations are becoming more and more prevalent, especially this location here, the McDuck Manor. This card is a powerhouse in this deck if you can get it out late game. And like I said, in the mirror match, you're really going to need something to deal with this. So the Rise of the Titans card is the perfect answer to those troublesome locations. So we're running 2 copies of that. You could potentially run more copies of it if you're finding, your opponents are playing quite a few locations. And it's also good for getting rid of items. You notice it says banish chosen location or item. So you can also in the mirror match be getting rid of your opponent's fishbone quills to try to slow them down. Now we are also running, like I said, these songs. 2 copies of And Then Along Came Zeus. This is an excellent new song from the Into the Inklands. This is from the newest set. Your Flaversham can sing this, and then a bunch of your other characters can sing this as well. But I find Flaversham singing it more often than anybody else. But like I said, you've got a lot of characters that are capable of singing that 4 cost, and there are also a lot of characters that can sing your 5 cost Whole New World and Grab Your Sword. Running 4 copies of the Whole New World, 3 copies of the Grab Your Sword, and then we are running 4 copies of the Popsicle. This is a must-have in the deck. This draws you a card right away, and then the Flaversham can banish this and draw you cards, or you can heal, say your Cogsworth later on, or cards that you really want to stick around. Popsicle's an excellent card, and lots of value from that card. 3 copies of the Fishbone Quill, another essential for this deck because you absolutely want to try to ramp up as quickly as you can. We got 2 copies of this Lucky Dime. This is one of my favorite cards from the new set. It's a 7 cost uninkable item, but it being uninkable is sometimes an issue. You don't want to see this early on in the game. If it's in your opening hand, you definitely want to mulligan it away. And sometimes I'm noticing that I'm having to use the Fishbone Quill to get rid of it. However, when you do draw it at the right time, this card closes out games and your opponent doesn't even realize it's about to happen. It feels great and just a really nice addition to the deck. I think 2 copies of that and the deck feels pretty solid. And then, like I said, we have the 4 copies of the McDuck Manor, just a monster of a location, 9 willpower, and is gaining you 2 lore every turn, and it's also inkable, so if you draw that early on, you'll probably be inking it as well. So your opening hand for this deck, you really want to make sure that you have a 1-drop card, whether it be a Captain Hook or a Popsicle. It's always best to try to mulligan for a Captain Hook, a Mr. Smee, and some type of ramp, whether it be a Mickey Mouse or a Quill. I really prefer having the Quill in my opening hand. And so the best opening hand, in my opinion, would be having a Captain Hook, a Mr. Smee, a Cogsworth, a Whole New World, a Quill, and a Popsicle. Or potentially you would want something to ink. So, however, like I said, you really want to make sure you have at least the 1, 2, 3. Having a Cogsworth in your opening hand is nice because you can get him down on turn 4. And then if you have that Whole New World in your opening hand, you'll be able to sing that on turn 5 and have a lot of ink to play with and just keep flooding the board with more useful characters or items. Now, if you're going up against, say, anybody running Emerald that might have that Ursula, they're usually playing that Ursula that banishes a song card pretty early on. So if you're going up against Emerald, a lot of times it's not a good idea to have either one of these songs in your opening hands. So mulligan those away against Emerald and mulligan those away against Amber, because Amber has the bare necessities and they usually like to cheat that out early and take away your songs. Your bare necessities is also an issue for everything else. It can get rid of your Fishbone Quills, it can get rid of your Lucky Dimes, it can get rid of your McDuck Manor. So yeah, Bare Necessities is a great card and can definitely do damage to this deck. However, I do have a few games to show you, and one of them is against a Steel Songs deck, and I do believe they run Bare Necessities. So let's get into those games on Pixelborn, on Pixelborn, and I will speed them up and just give you some commentary of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and you can see how I like to pilot this deck. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so our first game is going to be against Ruby Amethyst, which is still a very strong deck. Definitely one of the best decks in the meta currently. You see, we're going to get rid of that Bell early on, but we have our 1-drop, and we also have a Popsicle and the Fishbone Quill. So we'll be able to start our ramp engine early, and it is great to have that Captain Hook to play on turn 1. Or if you wanted to, you could play the Popsicle, but I prefer to have a character on board to deal with anything that I might need to deal with early on. They are already going to try to draw a card from their Chernobog's followers, get their Rafiki down, and now, see, I'm glad we have that Captain Hook on board because we can challenge into that Rafiki if need be. Drop the Popsicle and a second Captain Hook. We're going to leave our Captain Hook readied so that his Rafiki can't get an easy trade from that Captain Hook. He plays Maleficent and drawing some cards. We draw into the Tinkerbell. We're going to hang on to her and ink the Cinderella just in case the Tinkerbell would be able to get down sooner. Right now, that's what we're going to ramp to try to get in since we don't have a Cogsworth. The plan is to get the Tinkerbell down and be able to sing A Whole New World and replenish our hand. So at this point, you have to decide if you want the ramp or if you want some more card draw or both. In this case, and now we drew into another Smee. I think it's probably best to ink that Smee so that we have potential to play the Tinkerbell on the next turn, and then she can be singing A Whole New World from there. We're going to go ahead and leave everything readied just in case they have the Madame Mim Fox. I didn't want to exert any of my Captain Hooks for them to start cleaning up my side easily. A lot of times you'll find it's best to keep your things safe until you can get the most value out of the challenge. You don't want to make bad trades. So we drop the Tinkerbell. Now we can make a favorable trade into the Maleficent, and we're going to go ahead and quest everything out because I'm confident we'll be able to sing next turn, replenish our hand, and restabilize our board state if they do go ahead and take out some of our Captain Hooks at this point. So they have the spellbook in play. Right now they are beating us in lore. I'm not too concerned because we do have everything we need to really just start running away with this game. Being able to refill our hand is excellent. We're going to put another card into the inkwell with the quill, and now we can just go ahead and continue questing, feeling confident that I can, like I said, restabilize if they wipe the board. They could be prepared next turn. At this point, I don't care if they do that because I've got the Tinkerbell in my hand, I've got a Cogsworth in my hand. I do have a way to just reload the board, and they are going to be prepared, get their card draw. And so now at this point, it wouldn't be a bad idea to play our location. They could play a Maui and rush into it, but they won't be able to take it out in one shot because they do not have the fish hook at the moment. So we'll go ahead and play our Cogsworth, and he will be able to sing A Whole New World next turn if we wanted to, say, play the Tinkerbell and ink Along Came Zeus. Or maybe we could use that to get rid of the Maui. He does get the fish hook in with the Maui and takes out the location. We were a little bit afraid of that happening, but that's okay. In the meantime, we're going to draw some more cards and hopefully get what we need here. Having a second Cogsworth is never a bad idea, and everything would have resist +2. At this point, I don't necessarily want to sing A Whole New World, but I'm going to ink the Cogsworth and go ahead and just quest. There's not a whole lot that he could play to get rid of it except for Lady Tremaine. So now I'm in a position where I'm going to have to use the Whole New World. Hopefully we can discard some cards from their hand that are really going to help us out. get rid of the Lady Tremaine first with Along Came Zeus, and then let's go ahead and use Whole New World. We did manage to get rid of a few troublesome cards, but I would have liked to have seen another Be Prepared in that discard. But we do have a good position here to play a location. We're continuously getting ink into the inkwell. You see we have 14 ink and they have 9. Yes, they are still ahead on lore, but I'm still fairly confident that we can slowly creep ahead of them with the amount of ink that we have. We just have so many options at this point. We draw into another Cogsworth. We'll play the Gaston. Getting the Belle at this point is excellent because we have her in the Lucky Dime, and you can see exactly what I mean. Instantly gaining that 5 lore off her is just devastating for the opponent, and they had no way to stop that because the dime was already in play, and Belle comes down with all the ink in the ink well that we have, her ability triggered, and now we're set up with lethal for next turn, just like that. They could have a Be Prepared, and that would slow us down. But as you see, there are a few already in the discard, or a couple rather. I don't know how many they're running in this deck, but they're pretty limited on what they can do, and we still have a lot of ink. They do find the Be Prepared, which is great for them. However, will they have a way to deal with my location? It does not look like it. So we are definitely going to be at 18, and if we can get something out and use the Lucky Dime, that's the game. There we go. There's Mr. Smee. We can exert the Lucky Dime, gain the 2 lore from that. You see how beautifully that Lucky Dime comes into play and just creates a lot of advantageous moments for you to close games out. That's why I love the Lucky Dime, and that's why I love that Belle card as well. Okay, next up is a match against Amber Steel. This is a Steel Songs deck, so this is another great representation of how 2 of the best decks match up. Sapphire Steel, Amber Steel, Ruby Amethyst, these 3 decks are definitely some of the top contenders for the best decks currently in the meta. You see in my opening hand I was able to get my 1-drop, my 2-drop, and the Cogsworth, so far things are going pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and ink this Belle, play the Smee, and quest with the Captain Hook because she could sing a song next turn and take him out. I'd like to at least get the lore from that, and they do let the storm rage on. Glad we quested with that Captain Hook, and they're going to use bare necessities right out of the gate and take the Popsicle. I'm surprised they didn't take the Whole New World, but I'm okay with that. We will continue to move forward here. I don't have the tools necessary to start ramping early on, so that's a bit of a setback, and they definitely saw last turn that I had the Whole New World, so they're going to go ahead and take that too. Like I said, it wouldn't have been a bad idea for me to mulligan that away in my opening hand. Anytime you're going up against Amber or Emerald, that's usually an okay idea, because what happens is exactly what you saw. They're going to use cards to get rid of it. Now, they don't have a whole lot other than potentially the Rise of the Titans. They don't have a whole lot to deal with this location quickly, so I will be guaranteed that 2 lore from that. We will get the Cogsworth in play, and we're really hurting here for some ramp. So, wow, they have a lot of songs in their opening hand, but I guess that's to be expected from a Steel Songs deck. We do find a Whole New World. Hopefully, we'll be able to get this in play next turn without them taking it from us. So the plan is to sing it with one of my characters. That way I have more ink to play with and can get more board presence. So I am going to play the Smee and sing the Whole New World. We did manage to get rid of some good stuff on their end, and we drew into the Quill, which is great because now we can start ramping some more and do what this deck really wants to do. Get rid of the Develop Your Brain. And so now we also have a Flaversham. If we needed to, we could play him and get rid of that Quill and draw into some extra cards. I'd prefer not to have to do that to a Quill. I'd rather be banishing the Popsicles. But they are getting quite a wide board on their end as well. So cards like Let the Storm Rage On are going to be very impactful. But we will just go ahead and match their wide board with a wide board of our own, get the location in, take out their bodyguard, and now we'll just quest with everybody and try to race them to the end with lore, because once a Steel Song's deck starts going wide like that, before you know it, they are questing with everything and just closing out the game, especially when they have the strength of a Raging Fire. They're not only able to quest a lot, but they're also able to just clean up just about any character on your side that you would need. Using that Queen to give the Ariel the extra strength to take on my Cogsworth was an excellent play on their end. But unfortunately for them, we do still have enough lore in play to go ahead and close out this game. Okay, the last game I wanted to show you is a match against Amethyst Steel. This is an aggro version of Amethyst Steel, so sometimes if you don't get your grab your swords earlier in the game, you're going to have a tough time. And for some reason, I mulligan it away. I shouldn't have done that. Should have kept the grab your sword, but that's okay. Hopefully we see it again. We do at least get our one drop. This isn't the best opening hand. But of course, I had no way of knowing that this was going to be the aggro version of the Amethyst Steel. But as soon as you see that Maleficent come down on turn 1, you pretty much know what they're running. So we do have the Popsicle, draw us a card. We don't really need another copy of Whole New World, but whatever, we'll take it. And from here, we at least have our Mickey to help us do a little bit of early game ramping. We definitely don't need the Belle right now. Thankfully, we did draw into a Tinkerbell. She can be very helpful against aggro decks, dealing with those 1 willpower, pesky, high questing characters. However, they're probably going to be bouncing those things back to their hands to protect them, back to their hand rather. And that's just how a good pilot plays that deck. They didn't have anything to bounce it at this point, but we still don't have enough ink to get our Tinkerbell in play. So for now, we're just going to ink the Captain Hook, get a Cogsworth out, give everybody resist, and hopefully continue to try to slow them down while keeping up with lore on our end as well. That's, really your best bet. You got to slow the aggro decks down. But if you can, you really also want to be questing, because even if you are slowing them down throughout the game, they just have so many high questing characters that out of nowhere they're going to close out the game, and you're not even going to realize what the heck just happened. Let's go ahead, and we do get this Tinkerbell in. We'll clean up 2 of their characters, which is okay. I would have liked to have had a little bit more value out of her. I was hoping they'd play a Pinocchio or something that I could also hit before playing her, but we'll go ahead and refill our hand. We did get rid of an Arthur, which is great. He can be a bit of a nuisance to deal with, and we drew into 2 Grab Your Swords and a McDuck Manor, which is a great card against this aggro deck, because I don't think they're going to have a whole lot of ways, or I don't think they're going to be running Rise of the Titans. That'd be one way for them to deal with it, and we're going to ink ours because I don't think they have locations or pesky items for me to need to deal with. So we will get the Manor in play and another Smee, and at this point they have a lot to deal with on our end, and they're certainly not going to manage it with just a couple of Foxes. So let's go ahead and gain some more lore here, take out their Fox, and now we're in a really good position. We've got 2 characters questing for 2 and a location questing for 2. Next turn we can get another location out. That's, like I said, in an aggro match, they have a hard time dealing with a big location like the McDuck Manor. So that's definitely our best play, is to try to gain our lore from big locations. And, if you can have a good board presence as well, that's great too. But they do bounce the Smee back to our hand. That's still probably not going to be enough to slow us down. We are going to get the other McDuck Manor into play. And at this point, we could consider doing some ramping to help set us up for a strong turn on our next turn. And we'll put the Smee back into play. Quest, pass it to them. At this point, we are in a position to win the game with our 2 lore from the Manors and Tinkerbell and Smee. So I don't know if there's really a whole lot they can do. That snake does not have Rush, so that's not that helpful for them. They do have a goat, still just not enough. We get our 2 from that, and close out the game. Well folks, there you have it. Sapphire Steel Ramp is definitely one of the best decks in the meta right now. A lot of people will tell you this deck is hard to pilot, it's hard to learn how to play it, and they're not wrong. However, if you just practice with it, know your matchups, it's definitely a powerful deck. You do get punished for making mistakes, more so than you would running, say, Ruby Amethyst, but once you learn the ins and outs of this deck, wow, is it a powerful tool to beat just about every other deck that's popular in the meta right now. I will say its toughest matchup is definitely against the Ruby Sapphire. That's another ramp deck, and they just have all the great removal tools that Ruby offers. So yeah, that one's a challenging one, but it still can be done. You will be punished very, very much so if you make a mistake. So learn your lines of play. Definitely do a lot of practice into the Ruby Sapphire, and who knows, maybe you find a couple cards that actually fit better to tech against a matchup versus Ruby Sapphire. But all in all, I love this deck. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of the deck, or what kind of changes you would potentially make to the deck. And if you enjoy getting consistent injections of all things Lorcana right onto your YouTube feed, please consider subscribing to my channel. And as always, folks, be kind and have a wonderful day.